I'm going to be sharing today 8 tips for using Microsoft Copilot for insights and research. And this is very much focused on Copilot in Office 365. It's going to be a similar picture if you're using the enterprise version. Some of it will apply to the sort of the publicly available free version. So here's the agenda, just a little bit about the context, and then the 8 tips that we're going to go through. So this, as I say, is about Copilot in Office 365. It's integrated with the tools. It can access the contents of documents, emails, and etc. At first, that sounds scary. Here is an AI that can read your emails. It's actually designed not to be scary because it's entirely inside your organization's system. If your IT department has decided that Teams is suitable to use, if they have decided that SharePoint is suitable to use, if they have decided that Outlook is suitable to use, then Copilot is exactly the same. It's inside the same box, the same parameters, the same security. Principally, I would recommend it for automating tasks, for being a little bit faster with all of those sort of things you use in Office 365. Copilot's based on OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, which means it's slightly older than the current ChatGPT 4i. There isn't an API version. That would make it very much less secure if there was an API version. So you can't write your own code in Python or something and call Copilot in. At the moment, there isn't an advanced data analysis module, which is also called the code interpreter in ChatGPT. But some people already have a Python add-on to Excel, and it's being rolled out for the rest of us at the moment. How long that rollout will take, but that will change dramatically the sort of things that you can use Copilot for in the analyses. So the first tip is use it in Edge. I haven't used a Microsoft browser for many, many years, but when I started using Copilot, it became very quickly obvious that I was going to maximize my benefits by putting my files in SharePoint or OneDrive, by accessing it online using Edge. There are a couple of exceptions to using it online, which I'll mention in a moment. It does work with other options. I can use it on my laptop. I can use it via the Chrome browser if I want to use Office 365, but it works better this way. So because you get that seamless integration, it can find where the files are. It's inside the security system. You get that collaboration with the other people in your organization who you can share SharePoint files with. You've got that security and compliance. You can, of course, access the files from anywhere. You can access version history. It's just the way to go. One of the things you need to think about when you do that is this little option called work or web. So you'll see it coming up on some of the Copilot screens. If you slide it to work, that's when Copilot can access the internal files, the emails and chat. It's good for the confidential stuff. It's good when you want to restrict the source it uses. It's good for internal projects, etc. Web is when you want it to search the web and find information from websites, public news and data. It's good for those sort of projects. It's particularly relevant in market research, competitive analysis, public information. So it's a very conscious decision you make. Here is an example, and it's also got a tip. So when we want to review emails, we can ask it to summarize all the people I've spoken to this week. Tell me about all the unfinished tasks I've got from last week's emails, things like that. But I've got a simple exercise here. I've typed in, look at my email sent over the last week and tell me the 5 words I used most often. And it came back with these 5. I took out one that would be confidential. Very, very sad reading for me. The top word I use is meeting, and followed closely by thanks. And my own name makes it into the top 5. And webinars, which I do a lot of, makes it in the top 5 as well. And that's the sort of thing it can do. I give it instruction, it goes and reads my emails, it comes back with information. Now, if I switch that slider to web and I give it the same instruction, look at my email sent over the last week and tell me the 5 words I use the most often. Sorry, Dave, I can't do that for those of you who've seen the film 2001. The computer says no. If I'm in the web mode, I don't have as much access to my internal stuff. And this is kind of reassuring, but it means it needs to be a very conscious decision whether we're using work or web. PowerPoint from a file. I think this is a really nice example. So if you just launch PowerPoint, then you've got Copilot come through and it'll say, create a presentation about, ask Copilot for some information, or that middle one, create presentation from a file. So I told it to upload this document, which is a report I did in the middle of last year. It's a Word document. It's full of data and tables and images and things like this. And it immediately creates a PowerPoint presentation for me, which means that I've got a starting point. What I will now do is I'll go to the first page, second page, go through, see what I want to change, see what I want to delete. One of the great things is that all of these things like this chart over here and this table over here are editable objects. They're not images or anything like that. This is all an integrated Microsoft world powered by Copilot. By the way, Microsoft do not pay me any money, so there's no declarations of interest there. And it just gets you moving faster. So the image of an owl is taken from the report, but the image of somebody concerns about AI looking out there was generated by Copilot. And when I get to that page, I could ask it to generate more images. We can go from Word to forms to data. So I'm in Microsoft Word here. I launch Copilot and say, I'm hosting a webinar to teach people how that is to conduct market research. Write a short questionnaire to gather feedback from the attendees. As a bit of a dyslexic, one of the things I love about generative AI is it's really tolerant of my typing mistakes, and I still get sense back from it. So I could do that in Word and it would generate a Word questionnaire, and then I could ask it for suggestions and I could ask it to make changes, and I could send that complicated Word questionnaire with routing and all those sorts of details to my stakeholder and say, is this what we want to do? But actually, if you've got a really simple one, I'm going to build on this tip and say, do it in forms. So you go into forms and you say, okay, I want to draft this with Copilot. I'm hosting a webinar to teach people how to conduct market research, write a short questionnaire to gather feedback from the attendees. So it's the same sort of exercise. It generates a questionnaire for me. And it's going to come up with these stars and these questions. It will also offer things that I want. So at the top, I can remove questions that I don't want, for example. As I go through, I get it a bit closer to what I want. I press the Keep It button, or I could add more details. Once I've done the Keep It button, I get a questionnaire that I can use in Forms, and it's loaded in Forms for me. And I still got options to add new questions or to add with Copilot. Copilot has got some suggestions for me, so we can fine-tune that simple questionnaire a little bit more. I can then hit collect responses. It comes up with a page like this, so I can rewrite with Copilot the message to go with it. I can send them via Outlook, I can send them via Teams, or I can copy the link and I can send people the link and we can start collecting data. So I collected 3 items of data, and Form now starts giving me the dashboard. I can look at that dashboard, and if I jump to the top right of that there, you'll see up here, look, a set of instructions. Boost those up. We can boost the responses with Copilot, individual results, or we can open the results in Excel. So we can leverage Excel with this as well. We get this option, and it tells us that as more data comes in, it's going to automatically update, and we're going to continue to see what the data is. So here's what the data looks like. You'll see in the top right, I've got my Copilot button, so I can start using Copilot to analyze this information. I submitted 3 more responses after I collected these, and then that was automatically visible to me in Excel. So the Copilot menu looks a bit like this, which is too tiny to read on the screen. So let's blow that up. Copilot, all the time I'm working in Excel with this, it's going to suggest create formulas, or I can ask it to understand the data. It's going to summarize it using pivots or charts. I can do some color formatting. I can ask Copilot questions about how do I do things. It will also come up with buttons like show data insights, suggestion, and so on with that. So I might say, show me the average ratings for satisfaction and speaker for people who say yes and for people who say no to recommend. What it does then is it gives me a little summary and it explains what it has done. And it gives me a button that says, add this as a new sheet. So I'm in a workbook and it's going to add it to a new sheet, not on the same page. And when it does that, I get this little table coming out and says that the people who said no, they would not recommend it, had very low satisfaction scores, and the people who said yes, they would recommend it, had got very high satisfaction scores. So this has been generated in Form. The data was collected in Form. It linked to Excel, and then in Excel, I can see these sort of tabulations. Also, the sort of things I can do in Excel, I can say, add a new column to the data called duration, brackets seconds. Calculate the value by subtracting the start time from the completion time and show the answer as seconds as integers. It shows me the formula that it's going to use. It's going to use round completion time minus start time times by 86400. That is to do with when in history both of these were started off. And I've got insert column as a button down here that I can use. So that's the how, and that's the make it happen. If I do that, it's added. It's a bit small, so let's blow that up. Duration in seconds is now added as a new column on the right-hand side in the data. So none of this is stuff that I couldn't have done myself, but it's done much faster. And some of it, I might have forgotten what the command was. I might have forgotten exactly how many seconds I have to subtract to get to the base value of the difference between those two. Little bit on qualitative analysis. So what I did here was I uploaded the transcript of a focus group. I uploaded that as a PDF document. This is the details of that. You can access it online yourself if you want to experiment. I asked it to describe the document and its content. So this document is in my SharePoint, or it's on my OneDrive. So I'm in my work mode, describe the document, and it tells me about this, that it's titled this, that the focus group went through an introduction and warm-up session and discussions. The next question might be, please describe the 6 people in terms of cosmetics. It identifies from all of that text, here are the people that were spoken to, here's what they said about cosmetics. So we get a bit of a sense for the people who are in this data set. Then I can ask it to use grounded theory to analyze the conversation and report on the main reasons that women wear, another bad typo, wear makeup. And it comes back with an analysis based on grounded theory outline, talking about enhancing personal experience, social or cultural influence, professional image. I could then dive into that and start asking for actual quotes, asking it to perhaps analyze it with narrative analysis or discourse analysis, contrast the responses that I would get to move further in. Final 8th tip, and this is just a very high level thing that we're rushing through today, adding images. So when I first created today's presentation, that agenda slide looked like this. So I asked in PowerPoint Copilot and said, create an image that conveys an agenda for a training session about Copilot. And it came up with 4 suggestions. I picked one of those suggestions, and then I used Designer, which isn't Copilot, but is artificial intelligence, to pick a layout for that page as well. Again, it's just keeping the moving going rather than looking around for lots of images. I can ask it to suggest them. Copilot typically suggests 4 images. So one of those is likely to be good enough, frankly, and you can move through. Found all of that really interesting and useful. Then tomorrow I'm running a 90-minute course with a 30-minute Q&A, and you can find all about that at the newmr.org website. So thank you very much. And are there any questions?